Welcome to Live Life on Purpose with Jose and Jeff Feliciano from Feliciano Financial Group. In this podcast, brothers and certified financial planner professionals, Jose and Jeff, explain that money is just a tool to achieve the things you want in life, a tool to make the decision to live life on purpose. They draw from years of experience to demonstrate that when your money aligns with your goals, you can live a purposeful life. Because when your vision is clear, your decision is easy.
Hello and welcome to Live Life on Purpose with Jose and Jeff Feliciano. Jose, how are you today?
I'm fantastic. Good to be with you.
Good to be back with you. Jeff, how are you?
Hey, life is good. Good to be here. How are you?
I am doing great. And I know that you two are busy. Life is crazy busy. And it's funny because I think at every stage of our lives, we think, man, my life is so busy. I hope there's a point where it kind of slows down, and it really never does because there's always something going on. And that's kind of the topic that you have for today is young families. They're busy, and you've got a financial checklist for young families we're going to go over, right?
Yes, we do.
That is fantastic. I think this is a very timely topic, especially in this environment. So where are we starting today, Jeff?
You know, it's a good topic because I couldn't tell you how many times I hear, man, I wish I would have started when I was younger. Mm-hmm. Or, hey, do you have any of these type of things to better prepare our kids or our grandkids for their future? And, you know, when you think about young families, I mean, life is busy. They're just trying to get it started, get it going. But there are certain things that, you know, knowing what we all know now that we would have done a little different, you know, whether it's building wealth or improving finances or savings or credits or whatever the case may be, that, you know, it's kind of the intent of the checklist is what are the things we should be thinking about? What are the things we should be doing? And what are the things we should be taking in consideration to better prepare ourselves for the future?
Yeah, and you've got a list here of 8 items that we're going to talk about today, or you're going to tell us about today. But also you're going to be putting this information and some other resources on your website, correct?
You bet. I mean, I think it's important. I think a checklist makes it easier to increase the awareness of the challenges. Well, not really the challenges. I would say that's the opportunities of accomplishing the goals that you want.
Jose, yeah, that is fantastic, and I couldn't agree more. Jeff, I know that the list number one, and I think this is probably, I don't know if you put them in order of importance, but this is probably one of the most important things, communication.
You know, communication is tough, whether you're communicating with spouses, employers, coworkers. You know, successful couples always find a way to communicate effectively. And, you know, you always try to encourage clients and their spouses to discuss their priorities, discuss their concerns, discuss what's important to each other, and just make sure they're on the same page because, you know, it's a good thing about couples and marriage. I mean, usually opposites attract. You may have a spender, you have a saver, you've got a risk taker, you've got someone that's conservative. But, you know, having those differences is great as long as you can come together on common goals and objectives and what you're trying to accomplish. If you can talk, you know, within yourselves or with a independent or some financial advisor, just to make sure you're on the same page, building the type of future in life that you both want together.
And, you know, I just want to add on communicating. You know, we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and I heard an old saying years ago, but love is blind. And I really didn't hit me until maybe about 10 years ago. But when you're in love, all you do is look at the strengths of people. You never even see the weaknesses. And then over time, you start to focus in on the weaknesses. And I always try to tell everybody, just stay with the strengths. The weaknesses were always there. So when Jeff talks about, you know, both sides have different strengths. I'll use another example of a quarter. You know, you say, hey, what do you see? And one side will say, I see heads. And the other side says, no, I see tails. And you can argue all day long, but it's still a quarter. And when Jeff is talking about a common goal, you know, what is the quarter that you want? And you've got two different perspectives how to get there. And I think when you get that aligned, it's amazing what you can accomplish.
Yeah, that's a beautiful analogy because, you know, they're looking at it from two different perspectives. They see what they see, but they don't see the whole picture, right? So that I love that analogy. Jose, I know that you've spoken on this podcast before about goals, and number 2 is setting financial goals. Why is that so important for young families?
Well, here's the thing. Let's define how do you define a goal? Well, number 1, you have to have the name of the goal. Number 2, how much money does it take to achieve that goal? Number 3, what's the timeline that you want to accomplish that goal? And then number 4, what are you thinking and feeling when you accomplish that goal? Because you have to have an emotional attachment. And when you really think about how you would feel if you had accomplishment, then you're going to prioritize that goal, and things are just going to line up itself. So, and it's not just about what you feel, also what your spouse or your family, they're going to have goals also. But when you actually have it down in writing, it's really amazing what you can accomplish in life.
Yeah, and different things are important to different people, and I think whether it's a wish list, whether it's goals, what are the short, medium, long-term things that require money and planning to achieve? And it's important to get those on paper. Then together, you can prioritize those in order of importance, so you can, see which one takes precedence over the other, and just be on the same page of what those are. Are they obtainable, or what steps would we have to take in order to be on track to accomplish those things? I read something one time, I can't remember who quoted it, but they said something along the lines of, what's that one about any road will get you there? Oh, yeah. So I read a long time ago, I don't know who to give credit to, but, the point is if you don't know where you're going, then it doesn't matter, because any road will get you there. But if you're clear on what's important to you and what you're trying to accomplish, then it's easier to back those things down into baby steps. And what steps do I need to take now to bridge the gap between where I am and ultimately where I want to be, based on what's important to you?
Yeah, I love the fact that you put this at number 2, and number 3 that's next is something, as a father of young adults, this was something that was very foundational. So I love the fact that you're talking about the goals. And then number 3 is talking about budget, managing your debt, and credit score, which is incredibly important.
Yeah, they all kind of run hand in hand. But, at the end of the day, there's the reality check, right? We want to accomplish all kinds of things in life in this world, but, at some point you've got to check reality, and there's only so much income that comes in. And everything has to be set in a certain priority in order to make things work. So you've got to create a budget to know, all right, what are the bills? I learned a long time ago that we all have good intentions. Somebody told me early on in my career, they said, Jeff, here's the deal. We all have good intentions. We make money, we spend money, and then we try to save what's left. Mm-hmm. The reality is, Jeff, there's no money left. Yeah. As the more money you make, the more money you spend, your lifestyle changes. And even though with the greatest intentions, it's hard to save money because there's never any left. So one of the things that you have to do is treat those goals, treat those things you want to accomplish, treat savings as a bill, and adopt that philosophy of, all right, I've got to pay myself first, because it's so hard to do, if you do it the opposite way. So creating a budget is important. Figuring out what your needs are, figuring out what your variable expenses and your wishes are, and just make sure that you're aligning those things on paper, so you can prioritize and accomplish the things that are important to you.
And, let's use a couple of examples. If you want a house by a certain date at age 30, and what kind of house do you want to have, and how much is it going to cost, and what do you need as a down payment? And when Jeff talks about paying yourself first, then out of your paycheck, and when you make the deposit in that bank, maybe they could draft out of that account, your checking account, into your savings account, and that money is earmarked for a house. If you want to set time when you've got young kids and you've got a situation where you want to give them the opportunity to go to college that you grew up and didn't have the opportunity to have any help when you were growing up. So you would want to set aside some money to have it drafted into another account, or the same account, but it's earmarked for education, and you can provide those things for your kids. But if you actually prioritize and, like Jeff said, pay yourself first in whatever categories that's important to you, and live on what's next. And there is a big difference between wants and needs. You can want a lot of things, and that emotion takes over, but you only need certain things. And if you prioritize, especially being young, and develop those habits very early, you'll be surprised at you'll meet the goals that you.
And the problem with society these days is debt. I mean, I remember my third year in college. I'm just being a traditional, normal college kid. And I'll never forget spring break rolled around. I had a bunch of friends. Everybody was going to South Padre Island. I was kind of bummed because I was running out of money. I didn't have any money. So I was debating on going home or for the week or what do I do? And then sure enough, guess what pops up in my mailbox in my college dorm? A Discover card for $500. And boy, I tell you, that was a great week that I had in South Padre. But what the mistakes that I made is, thinking that it's that today mentality. I mean, anything you want today, you can have. I mean, you can go to Best Buy, and if you want that 65 flat-inch TV, you don't have to have the money. You can walk in there and just sign up for a 22% credit card and pay it over time. I mean, everything is that way. Yeah. And they make it so easy to borrow money. And, no wonder the consumer debt has grown to record highs. I think there's household debts in the 13, 14 trillion range. Your average under the age of 35 is somewhere around 67,000. 35 to 40-year-olds they average about $130-something thousand worth of debt. So it's a very slippery slope. It's easy to get into debt so fast on the things that we feel like we have to have today. And unfortunately, society just makes it too easy. I mean, if you want to watch a movie or any kind of phone or any kind of song, I can have it playing on my iPhone in a matter of, 20-something seconds. Yeah. And it just creates this now mentality that you got to be very conscious of and just make sure that you're, managing your debt, you're creating a budget, you're prioritizing the things that are important, and make sure you don't get yourself in the trap.
Yeah. Well, this next one's interesting because I think it helps with obviously managing your debt and budget and credit score. Is you're saying to get organized and consolidate your assets. What do you mean by that?
I think part of life is it's so easy to get busy and things just get chaotic, especially when you're young or you have kids or you're trying to build a career and you think about your 401k and your IRA and your checking accounts and do I buy insurance or not? What does the budget look like? You just have all these things and decisions that you have to make with money. So one of the things that if you can create a habit of, all right, let me get myself organized. How do I simplify my finances and use some kind of tools, whether it's mint.com or eMoney or, there's a whole bunch of good financial tools that can help you create a budget, that can help you follow a budget. Make sure that when I log in to one spot, I can see my IRAs and 401ks and my wife's investment accounts. And, because at the end of the day, the more organized and consolidated you are, you're able to pinpoint decisions a lot easier, create a theme or a thread of, all right, what system works for you? And how do I get everything kind of in one spot? How do I get organized? And, some are able to do it on their own. Some you may engage a fiduciary or a financial advisor just to kind of help create a platform or something easy for you and your wife to follow.
And, we all have a tendency to procrastinate. And sometimes we need a relationship with somebody that validates, are we able to go down this path? And I think having a second opinion, if somebody told me years ago when I was 18, 19, I could just hug him today. He said, a person can learn by their mistakes, but a smart person learns by other people's mistakes. And that just stuck with me. And I've had mentors all my life, and I've always found somebody that I highly respected and asked them how they got to where they were at and, what actions did they take and how did they prioritize, and you'll find mentors. And then one thing about what Jeff said about getting organized and consolidate the assets. For some reason, when you're organized, you just feel like you're in control and you can go to the direction that you want to go. But I think the first step is getting organized for sure.
Yeah. Well, number 5 on the list is owning a house or renting.
Well, one thing for sure is that, we do have a philosophy that renting is just a waste of money and owning a house is the way to go. But when you're younger, and if you got young kids or if you're just starting out or even if you're 40 years old, sometimes when you have more expenses, if it comes out to be that way, then it's less risk that you can take. And what I mean by risk is that sometimes there's job opportunities that pop up that we really can take ourselves to another level, but we're kind of scared and we play defense because the expenses have gotten so overwhelmed. So we're kind of on the grind, or you could say, what's that about the hamster in the wheel?
Oh, yeah,
You're just spinning, and you're working actually for life instead of, you're letting life control you instead of you controlling life. And I remember one time somebody told me that, what is time? And time is actually a schedule of events throughout the day, and you want to be able to control your time. And I think that the best investment you have, especially in these times with inflation, is to invest in yourself, to take yourself to another level, get more educated, have more specialized knowledge in the field that you're in. But sometimes you just run out of that time because you're having to work just to make ends meet. And if you can just cut off those expenses, and sometimes renting, we're back to, owning a house or renting a house, sometimes cutting your overhead down and just renting for the time being gives you that flexibility to take advantage of opportunities that lay out. Because every challenge that I've seen in the past is always an opportunity of the future. I think keeping your expenses down and owning a house does make sense at times, but then renting a house, don't look at that as a bad route because there's a lot of advantages there too.
Yeah, and when you think about, financially, people, it's really a longer decision, because if you think about it from a financial standpoint, you do have to come up with a good 20% plus down in order to get the best interest rates. Buy a house, you're going to pay 6% in realtor fees. So right off the bat, you're negative 6%. And then if you want to turn around and sell it, and you get a realtor's, and there's 6% to sell the house. So usually, if you're going to live somewhere for a while and you've got time on your side, then maybe it makes better sense to go ahead and buy a house. But if you're not sure, to Jose's point, because you're still young and trying to get it going, then it's not as it's the time factor is where you build equity and make money. But you've got to overcome your closing and sales cost on the front end and the back end in the short run. Well, that's 12% plus closing cost. And if you have to borrow money to buy that piece of property, then the first so many years, most of what you're paying isn't going towards the equity, it's going towards interest payments. Not to mention you're responsible for your own repairs and upkeep and property taxes and insurance. So I always like to say, hey, let's take our time. It may feel that way, but let's make sure we get grounded. We're going to be here for a while, but we're making good, sound decisions on what the future holds, and the balance between student loan debts or down payments, and just make sure we're thinking it through instead of just jumping into a piece of property.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. And I would add one thing to that, just because I've recently had some experience with it. My daughter moved into a house that we had as a rental property for a long time. She wanted to buy it. That was her goal. But we said, you know what, try it out first and be in the house for a while and see what you think. And gentlemen, it took 6 months. And it was, I'm not going to buy a house, because she didn't enjoy the lawn work, right? She had to do the yard. She had to do the basic upkeep of the property. And then also she would, I told her, write down anything that needs to be fixed or that you think needs to be fixed, or when things break, so that she could get a view of what she would have to take care of in the future if she bought a house, compared to me helping, me doing it because it was our house. But she very quickly realized, you know what, I think I want a condo. You don't know until you try. So I would encourage people to rent a house. If you've only lived in apartments, there's not a lot of maintenance there. So rent a house for a year, see what you think. And if you're able to keep up with everything and enjoy it, well, there you go. That can be part of the decision.
Yeah, and the thing I would say in summary is that always remember that when you own a house and you actually live in it, there's a great book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. But if you're actually living in the house, then it is an expense. Now, when you buy a house for rental property, then we're talking it's an investment. So there is a difference between the two. And I'd highly recommend, download, listening to an audiobook and listen to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that'll kind of get you educated on some areas that, you can improve your lives. But there is a difference between an investment and an expense. And that's kind of what we're referring to.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so the sixth thing on your list is take advantage of retirement contributions, pre-tax or after tax.
Yeah, so I see it a lot as young professionals or young adults. We go work somewhere, and maybe we don't think it's going to be permanent. Maybe we think we're going to be there for a little while, or whatever the situation is. But there's a lot of companies that offer retirement plans. They could be simple IRAs, they could be 401ks, but it is very important that you can't ever start saving too young. And I think Thomas Edison said one time, he said, the next best thing to electricity is compound interest. So the more aggressive, or the earlier you are, the younger you are when you start saving money, the better off you'll be in the long run. You can ask your parents, you can ask your grandparents. Sometimes it's not how much you save, it's just how much time you have to save that matters the most. So take advantage of retirement plans through work. Find out what the match is. Most of the time, they'll have some form of a match. Maybe it's 3%, maybe it's 6%, maybe it's, whatever combination. But, if you think about it, that's free money. So as long as you put in 6%, they're going to match you 6%. And I'll tell you, there's not a CD in the country or a mutual fund in the country that guarantees a 100% return like that match is. So you've got to make sure you take advantage of it. The second part of that is, if you think that we're going to earn more money the older we get and the more skill sets we have, which is for most people, then a lot of those 401ks, they'll have a Roth feature. So you're able to contribute your part of the money. And instead of being able to deduct it on your taxes, I encourage you to take advantage of the Roth feature inside that 401k, because it'll grow tax deferred, but later on in life, regardless of how much money you make, you'll be able to pull that money out tax free. So there's some good calculators that are online that can show you the math, but there's nothing better than not having to pay taxes on money down the road based on your tax bracket. So that's the second part of that. I think third, it goes back to me mentioning earlier about getting organized and consolidating assets. I think the average person may change jobs somewhere between 5 and 7 times in their career. So I see a lot of people have 401ks, and then they change jobs, and then they get that 401k, then they change jobs, and next thing you know it, they have 2, 3 old 401ks just laying out there. They couldn't tell you what they're invested in, or they hadn't looked at it in so long. But if you can keep all those consolidated, the laws let you roll those out either to your own personal IRAs, or you can roll them to the new company 401ks. But part of getting organized and simplified and keeping everything together, take all those old 401ks, roll them into an IRA or roll them into your current 401k, and I think you'll make better decisions with your money.
And just to add to that, we're often asked, is it a good time to invest? Is it not a good time to invest? And of course, you got time on your side. But as your company is matching what you're putting in, and if I can encourage everybody to just save 10%, most people never miss it out of their paychecks. And if your employer's also adding money to it, and whether it's good times or bad times, things are going to go up and it's going to go down. But you're dollar cost averaging every month. So when times are not good, you're getting things on sale. When times are good, then you're making money. So if you just do it on a consistent basis, on a month by month, that nest egg is going to grow and grow like you wouldn't believe. So I think that, when we're talking about paying yourself first, this 401k or the retirement plans that your company does offer, that's a great way to start, to go ahead and build a nest egg and just start that habit, and you will not miss the money. The second thing, I've just mentioned a Foley's Red Apple sale. It is pretty amazing when Foley's was around. When they did that Foley's Red Apple sale, you'd see the whole parking lot full as it could be. But when it comes down to the market, we have a tendency to be scared when times are not going good, when we really need to be investing in the market at the time. So I guess the purpose of all this is just to encourage that there's never a right time to invest, because when you got time on your side, the consistency and the time horizon is what is going to accumulate wealth, just like Jeff had said.
All right. Well, that leaves us number 7 on the list, and that is planning for children's expenses.
I'll tell you what, I've had 4 kids, and they're terribly expensive.
Yep.
But it's part of life, and if if you do decide to have kids, they're definitely a blessing, but you just have to make sure that you're just factoring those in. You've got expenses now for that and their activities and things like that. Those are budget items that you're factoring in. But you also have expenses when they get, when they start turning 16 and they're starting to drive and insurance and maybe a car payment, or if you plan on taking care of some college expenses, but it's almost one of those things too that it's never too early to start saving for our kids' futures and those things. So the earlier you can start, the better, especially for things like college or cars at 16 and those type of things. They make all kinds of different accounts that you can use, whether it's 529 plans for the kids, UTMA accounts, if we want to keep things a little bit more flexible that we can use for college or cars and other miscellaneous things. But we've covered those in prior shows, but I think the intent is all of these things requires some level of consistency. And success isn't, really a place. It's really more about consistency. The more consistent you are at saving, or the more consistent you are at anything, the more successful you'll become. So if we can just encourage people to think some of these things through, create a good budget, a good savings plan, and just try to be just a little more consistent tomorrow than you were yesterday.
And one thing Jeff will tell you right now, don't get a dog for each child. A dog is a very expensive thing, and sometimes I watch him go home and, oh my God, I got 3 dogs, and it's a tough deal. So anyway, he can share that experience with you. Also, one thing for sure, when the kids are young, you want to teach them about money and opening up and having discussions about how money works and the things that you have and what you think about and the challenges that you have. I think kids are sometimes not aware, but when they understand those challenges, then they actually participate. Now, just a quick story. I went to Disney World years ago with my daughter, and I said, you got $50 to spend this whole week on anything you want. And she would go in these stores and start looking at prices and prioritizing which one, how she could stretch those dollars. But I think it was just a good lesson to understand how money works and how you value different things. I'm not saying that's the only answer, but along that line, there's always life lessons there.
All right, and the last thing we've got on the list is getting life insurance. And also, you talk about simple wills and trusts too, right, Jose?
Yeah, one thing about life insurance to me, I was a guardian of both my brother and sister when I was 18, and we have parents that are deaf mutes, and I knew what felt like my potential was in the future to help the family in some way. But I knew that every time I got on a plane or I flew somewhere, I kind of tear up and start crying because I wanted to see them grow up. But I knew that if something happened to me, I wanted to make sure the family was taken care of no matter what. And so, what does taking care of mean? That means different things to different people. And I wanted to make sure my mother was taken care of as far as having the income that we were providing. I wanted to make sure that we had college funding for the kids, even though they were brothers and sisters of mine. And so that was important to me. So I ended up getting $1 million term policy at age 19. It was only $20, $30 a month. But I'd give anybody $20, $30 a month for me to make sure I don't have to use it. Mm-hmm. So I was a big believer in life insurance and just making sure that because of my potential earnings of the next 20, 30, 40 years, and whether I was here or not, I still wanted to have that injection into the family, and that was important to me. And, one thing about families, when you're young and you've got 2 kids or 3 kids or 4 kids, you are the breadwinner a lot of times, or the spouse can be the breadwinner. But you do lose the income to the family, and I think that a lot of people don't calculate what that income value is over the next 10, 20, 30 years. But then you also lose one parent. So that means the other parent is raising 2 or 3 or 4 kids, and you want them to spend that quality of time with their family and raise their kids and not have to outsource those kids. So you really need to think through about, what your value is to the family. And if you're not here, how much money do you have to have? How big the golden goose needs to be to produce the golden eggs that takes care of your family for 10, 20, 30 years. Life insurance was always important to me. And, of course, simple wills and trust. I mean, there's a lot of friends I've lost through the years, had car accidents and sudden illnesses and things that that every time I hear about somebody that passes away, and I know that they didn't do business with us, or we didn't get a chance to visit, I always ask myself, did they have their house in order? And and then not only that, you don't want to give a big chunk of money to your kids at 18 and 21, and they don't have the incentives to work, and you just don't. So you have to provide structure for that, and have your will done, and get some trust work done for your kids, that if they do inherit a lot of money, you can spread it out over the years to where they don't just become a trust fund baby, meaning, and not have purpose in life. So anyway, I know I kind of got a little long-winded there, but it's important to me.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Protection on the front end and on the back end. So, I mean, that's great. Gentlemen, this has been a fantastic podcast. I know that you're supplying these resources on your website. Can you give the website out again?
Yeah, it's www.felicianofinancial.com.
All right, guys, thank you so much for your time today.
You bet. Always enjoy it.
All right, and the last thank you goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you for listening to the Live Life on Purpose podcast with Jose and Jeff Feliciano. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when the guys come out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it really easy to share these podcasts with your friends and family. And this is a great one to share when you have younger folks that need to hear this kind of stuff. This is a great foundational financial podcast for them. Please share it with them, and they'll thank you. Again, thank you for listening today. For everyone at Feliciano Financial, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live life on purpose.
Thank you for listening to Live Life on Purpose with Jose and Jeff Feliciano. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Feliciano Financial Group. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.
Securities offered through Lion Street Financial, LLC, LSF, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Lion Street Advisors, LLC.